Hello, everyone. Good Thursday evening. It's Thursday night, which means it's time for the Lions Grid. Joined in here today by Jeffrey Raymond and Joe Wilmot. Gentlemen, well, welcome to the show. We're here in episode 6. Hard to believe it's already been 6 episodes in this young season.
Oh yeah, Detroit Lions Grid. This is the show you want to tune into if you want NFL, if you want Detroit Lions news, and you want to dive in and dissect the season. This is the show.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, Joe, we do cover a little bit of the NFL, so we'll get started here taking a look. We're going to go grind the grid here real quick in our segment featuring a too long didn't read recap of what happened around the league in week 2. So we'll toss it up here on the board. You can see we have the grid in place. We'll get the music running and we'll dig in here and take a look back at what happened here this past week. So we got the music running. We got the slides up. We're taking a look at the first game from last week, the Thursday night matchup. The Eagles won that game 34-28. They improved to 2-0, and the Vikings go to 0-2. And of course, one big note there for Lions fans: DeAndre Swift went off in that game, taking over the running back 1 position for the Eagles, and had himself quite the game. Next up, we have an AFC North matchup. We had the Ravens going to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals, and the Ravens win that by a field goal, 27-24. Next up, we'll talk more about this game in just a minute, but of course, in overtime, the Seahawks winning in Detroit 37-31. Next up, we have an AFC South matchup. The Colts winning 31-20 in a game that saw 2 rookie quarterbacks squaring off. Of course, Richardson did not finish the game for the Colts, and Gardner Minshew came in. But we did have C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson headlining that game. And again, the Colts won that one 31-20. Taking a look at the Bears and the Buccaneers, 2 NFC teams squaring off. The Buccaneers, we'll talk about if they're for real later on, but they won that game, improving 2-0, 27-17. Next up, the Chiefs look to rebound after that Week 1 loss to our Detroit Lions, doing so against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Kelce back in that game and also possibly dating Taylor Swift. 17-9 victors there. Taking a look at the Green Bay Packers and the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons squeaking out a close game there. Of course, we'll be taking them on this week, but they won that game 25-24 against our rival Packers. Next up, the Raiders headed to Buffalo. They lost that game 38-10, and the Buffalo Bills sort of got back on track after a rough Monday Night Football performance in Week 1. Speaking of rough performances, the Chargers fall to 0-2 on this young season as they lose to the Tennessee Titans 27-24. The 49ers continue to roll as they win 30-23 over the Los Angeles Rams. The New York Giants ended up coming back from behind after trailing at the half to beat the Arizona Cardinals 31-28. How about them Cowboys? They won 30-10 against the Jets, although bad news for Cowboys fans as Trey Diggs out for the season with an ACL, tore it at practice today. Could have some big repercussions on a defense that has been rather stellar so far for Dallas. Then we had the Commanders beating the Broncos 35-33. So 0-2 for the Sean Payton, Russell Wilson show. Broncos country, let's ride, I guess, as they are sort of faltering there. And then the Dolphins getting a win in Foxborough against their AFC East opponents, 24-17. The Dolphins get that win. Another divisional matchup on Monday Night Football was the Saints versus the Panthers. The Saints getting that 20-17 win, and that Saints defense is looking pretty potent. Of course, this week we did have 2 Monday Night Football games. Both of them were divisional matchups, but the second game was the AFC North matchup between the Browns and the Steelers. The Steelers won that game 26-22, and of course, big news out of that game was that Nick Chubb out for the season after suffering a pretty horrendous knee injury. So, gentlemen, that's going around the league and taking a look at what happened. Any thoughts about any of those sort of highlights that I pointed out there? Any of that news that really stood out to you guys?
I'd say for the Dallas Cowboys defense, you're right. They have been stellar all season, and that's a big blow. But they do have who I think may be the best defensive player on that line. So their pass rush is going to be still elite, but we'll see if the secondary can kind of make up for the injury.
I don't think Tampa Bay's 2-0 start is really foretelling of how they're going to play out the season. I don't see Baker Mayfield as a top 15 quarterback in the NFL. So I think that this might be a one and done season for him, but off to a good start, I would say. But I can't see Tampa Bay really competing for a playoff position. Good start, but I don't think I see that happening this season.
Well, we'll talk on both of those subjects here in a minute too, as we dive into the buy or sell. So, great things to point out, and we'll get some more thoughts here in just a moment. So, starting out our buy or sell segment, we're going to kick things off with the NFC East is the best division in football so far. It's only, of course, we're in week 3. We've only had 2 complete weeks of football. No NFC East team has a losing record currently. They are the only division that can say that. Are they the best division in the NFL currently? Let's start with you, Joe, and get your thoughts on whether or not the NFC East is the division to beat.
This is a buy for me. I think the NFL's East is the strongest division. Only question is the New York Giants and Washington. Washington's 2-0, and the New York Giants, they lost the opening game to the Dallas Cowboys. And are the Dallas Cowboys really that much better than the New York Giants? So it's like, okay, well, so we have to take into context, the record, of course, which is the best record amongst all divisions. And we have to look at and see, well, what can we look at when we look at Washington? We can look at, a 500 team. What can we look at when we look at New York? We can look at a team that may be a loss or two under 500, or maybe a win or two above 500. We don't know about New York. And Dallas and Philadelphia are shoo-ins, I think already this year for the playoffs. I think it's the Dallas Cowboys that's the big surprise. That even in preseason, I predicted a little bit that the Dallas Cowboys might be contenders this year for the division, or either that or going far into the playoffs. But yeah, I think that it's the strongest division. This is a buy for me. NFC East is the best division in the NFC and in football right now.
Jeffrey, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I agree. It's an absolute buy. By the numbers, best record. NFL is about stacking up wins, especially when we get closer to playoffs. So any win looks good in the standings. So that's definitely a buy for me. I think the Giants have the most to prove, because I think they've been the most shaky performance, at least for the first 6 quarters of their season. The last couple, they've come alive here, but it was against a pretty lackluster Cardinals team, I think. But I think they have the Thursday night game tonight, so we get to see pretty soon if they are going to be keeping up their holding their weight in the NFC East.
Yeah, I think for myself on this one, last week I was going pretty optimistic. I'm going to keep things going here, and I am going to say buy on this one as well. I'm trying to think, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other NFC divisions and their potential to send multiple teams to the playoffs this year. But I think right now, especially Philadelphia, Dallas, they're 2 very strong teams. And I think the Commanders potentially could challenge and could potentially be that 3rd team. Definitely, I think the Giants are the dud of the bunch. But I think if you still have 2 very strong teams, one team that's competing for a wild card spot, or potentially competing for that 3rd wild card spot, I think that makes you a pretty strong division overall. And I can see my father's going ham over there in the YouTube chat. We'll get to some of his comments here in a moment, because some are pretty spicy takes, especially with Baker being better than Goff. But we'll touch on that one in a moment. But we'll move here to our second buy or sell question of the day. The second question is, Cincinnati, of course, is now 0-2 after losing last week to the Ravens. Are you buying or selling the fact that they can once again run the table and make it to the playoffs? And I'll start here. I think a big thing, and I'm going to buy it because I'm going to hope that Joe Burrow, in this injury that he has with his calf, gets figured out and he can continue to be on the field and his productivity picks up. So optimistically, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to buy, and I'm going to say they can make it, because I really do like Joe Burrow. What they bring to the table with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. I really think it's only a matter of time until that offense really gets clicking. And so I'm going to buy this one. But Jeff, what are your thoughts here? You buying or selling Cincinnati being able to make the playoffs?
I am
0-2 teams only have an 11% chance of making the playoffs.
I am buying with a big caveat, and that is Joe Burrow's calf. He's been having that injury throughout training camp, and it clearly affected him in the first game. He played a lot better in the second game, despite having to make up for that offensive line. Like, he's got to move around, and he was taken off limped. He was limping at the end of that game. He did not practice today. If he doesn't come back, I don't see them making the playoffs. They don't have a real backup quarterback. So the buy is a big caveat. Can they rest Burrow and get him healthy enough to run this offense?
That is a big caveat. Joe, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I look at the overall records in the NFC and the AFC, and I see the most wins, for the NFC right now, having so many teams at 2-0 and 1-1, and in the AFC, it's more like 1-1, 0-2, and just a few teams at 2-0. So I think that starting 0-2 in the AFC is not as they don't have as high up as a climb to go after an 0-2 start. And if I saw a stat correctly earlier today on ESPN, it's saying that the Bengals are the only other team in the last however many years to make the playoffs after starting 0-2, and they might have started 0-2 last year and made the playoffs. So, and then made that run into the conference championship. So, yeah, I think that Cincinnati has a good chance of making the playoffs. So this is a buy for me. AFC doesn't have a high climb to be a top team. Cincinnati Bengals can make the playoffs.
And looking at chat here, we are split 50-50 down the middle. My father is selling this one, and then Nick Thompson is buying. His point is being that once Burrow is healthy, all the AFC teams like to cannibalize wins against one another, and so that gives them a chance to sneak into the wild card spot. So we're 50-50 split there, but all of us here on the show going with the buy. I think we're all in agreement. As long as Joe Burrow can get healthy, it should be doable for them. Taking a look here, this next one is also kind of pertinent to the matchup that we have this weekend. Bijan Robinson has established himself as a top 5 running back in the league. Are you buying or selling this statement here, gentlemen? Joe, we'll start with you.
I'm going to sell this. I think it's overhyped. I can't name the top 5 running backs right now, but I know that there's good running backs in the NFL, and I'd say over Bijan Robinson, who's only had 2 career games, I'd say David Montgomery is a better running back than him. Because David Montgomery's breaking tackles and he's running between the tackles, breaking tackles and running between the tackles and getting into the end zone. Moving the chains. Getting 3 to 4 to 5 yards a carry. And, that's what we like to see. But does that mean he's not going to have a big game against the Detroit Lions this weekend? No, I think that he's going to have a good game. Detroit Lions have a hard time shutting down young talent that they don't have a lot of tape on, especially shutting down talent that's really hyped up, because generally if you're a playmaker, you're making plays against Detroit. So, but still, I don't think he's a top 5 running back. This is a sell.
Joe going with the sell. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts here?
I'm also going to go with the sell at the current moment, even though we did lose Nick Chubb, who I think is a top 5 running back. I think he does have some to prove here. He is currently number 2 in the rushing numbers and the leaders this season. Christian McCaffrey obviously has taken that lead, but yeah, it's a sell. Small sample size. We kind of wait and see, but he does look good though.
Yeah, for me on this one, I'm going to buy. I'll be the counterpoint on this one. I think certainly when you look at Atlanta in general, they are a very good rushing attack because Tyler Algier has also put up some rather good numbers, and of course this week they're getting Cordell Patterson back as well, so they're about to have a 3-headed rushing attack. But I mean, watching him run so far, he's been contributing in both the passing and the rushing game. He definitely looks like, when you obviously there's going to be comparisons for their entire career because the Lions had could have potentially taken Bijan had they not traded back and ended up taking Jahmyr Gibbs when they did. So naturally, they're going to be sort of compared to each other for the rest of their career. So comparatively, Bijan has come out and actually looked like a number one running back worthy of a first round pick, whereas we're still kind of waiting for Jahmyr Gibbs to turn that corner. We've seen flashes, but certainly, again, small sample size to both of your guys' points. But I think Bijan has shown that if you give him the ball and get him involved, good things are going to happen. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens against this Lions team, who hasn't really been tested yet in the running against a really solid rushing attack. We knew that was a weakness for them last year, so it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this Atlanta Falcons team. Because, like I said, it's not just Bijan you have to worry about. You also have Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson, who are all capable backs. So it's going to be interesting. Nick Thompson wants to know, if Bijan isn't in your top five, gentlemen, who are your top five running backs?
I'm going through my head.
Well, I know we're putting you on the spot here.
Christian McCaffrey.
Yep, he'd be on there for me.
Yeah, that.
Josh Jacobs, I think, is pretty good.
Josh Jacobs, I agree. Joe Mixon.
Derrick Henry. Nick
David
Chubb, I got to
Montgomery.
put him up there, even
Derrick
though we
Henry's
lost.
on there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it sounds like you guys are going more so not necessarily straight off the statistics or their fantasy output. You're going with just in general who you feel is the better, more established runner. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. That's fair enough. We got. I think we got to the crux of the issue.
Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook's a good running back. Got him.
Dalvin Cook's definitely talented. He has been having some fumble injuries though, or fumble issues lately, which has been surprising. It sort of started last year, and he just had one last week, but hopefully he can get that figured out. Because certainly I'd love to see Dalvin Cook.
He was unstoppable when he was with Minnesota last year. He was unstoppable. Detroit Lions could not stop him.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy I would love to see do a return to form. Speaking of hype, and we've talked about hype in various forms on the show. Justin Fields heading into the season. This was supposed to be a coming out season for him. He was supposed to have advanced. He was supposed to be coming in and potentially could be a dark horse MVP candidate. And he has been booty the first 2 weeks of the NFL season. It's gotten to the point where they're already talking about potentially, if he continues to play the way he's been playing, putting in that backup quarterback they drafted in like the 7th round out of somewhere, nowhere state, who the offensive coordinator saw at the Senior Bowl, and they've built that relationship. Gentlemen, are you buying or selling Justin Fields being a bust? Jeff, let's kick it off and start the convo off with you.
I am selling that he is a bust. He has a dumpster fire coaching staff, a dumpster fire coaching scheme. I watched a lot of actually film from this past week on him on this the quarterback school. JT O'Sullivan runs that, and he kind of broke down different plays, and they look lost out there. The O-line sucks. He's getting nervous. He either holds on to the ball too much, or he puts himself in position to make bad passes. He's not seeing it. It's not helping. He is just not put in a good situation to even succeed right now. I don't know how any quarterback could succeed in that system.
Good take. Joe, what are your thoughts? Buy or sell here, Justin Fields being a bust?
Yeah, I'm selling this. Still too early to tell in his career. I think last year he kind of turned a lot of heads when he started running the football and having those big, long gains for touchdowns, 30 yards, 40 yards, 60 yards. He'd break off those runs in the passing game. But from what I saw in the Green Bay Chicago game, yeah, the coaching staff didn't really set him up for a chance to be victorious and really put up the numbers. But you spent a high draft pick on him. You got all this invested into him. He's that mobile, somewhat accurate quarterback that everybody's going for these days. They want the mobility. Mobility is attractive in the NFL. If you're a mobile quarterback and you can make plays with your legs, everybody's going to love that. We saw it with Michael Vick. Cam Newton was really like the next step up from Michael Vick. We've seen it before with Randall Cunningham. I never saw him play, but saw highlights, and McNabb was even a little bit elusive. But yeah, really, we're seeing more of the elusive quarterback in today's NFL, and I think that it's too early to throw his talents away and to put him on the bench or second string or whatever. But I do see him getting a longer stint of trying to be a first string quarterback in the league, probably throughout the course of this year, unless he gets injured or unless Chicago just completely falls apart. This is a sell.
So I'm gonna go on the opposite foot again here, and I'm gonna buy this one. And it's not so much Justin Fields is the reason that I'm gonna say he's a bust. I think it's to a lot of your gentlemen's points. It's the fact that he's in a system with a coaching staff that isn't supporting him, and unfortunately, just like Joey Harrington when he suffered with the Lions, I don't think Joey Harrington was a bad quarterback, but he just got the crap beat out of him and the will to play football taken away from him. And so if Justin Fields has to continue to suffer in the situation where he's not being supported or elevated and allowed to play the level of football that he's capable of, because physically he's very talented, he can make the throws, he's got that running ability that you guys have talked about. He has the skills, so I think he's going to be a bust just because I don't see a way in which this relationship with the Bears plays out smoothly. So I think he's going to continue to struggle on the Bears. And then, maybe someone is able to, maybe he goes the Geno Smith route, right? Where he goes and he beats a backup somewhere and maybe they can help him, he gets a chance to play because of injury or something like that. And he can turn it around. But it doesn't seem like it's going to work out with the Bears. And when you are a early round, an early pick in the first round, I think there's a lot of pressure and a lot of hype on you, and so it lends itself to him being a bust. But I don't put it all on Mr. Fields there. I think he's definitely talented enough to be successful. Speaking of talented enough to be successful, Puka Nakua has come out of nowhere for the Los Angeles Rams and has one of the best starts of any rookie receiver over a 2-game span. He's had a ton of targets. He doesn't have any touchdowns, but has over 200 and I think it's like 227 yards in his 2 games. He's been very impressive. I know he's a little banged up at the moment, gentlemen, but are you buying or selling him being able to maintain this level of productivity headed throughout the remainder of the season? Joe, let's kick it over to you.
Yeah, DeAndre Swift is a good running back. He made a few mistakes when he was with Detroit. And oh wait, we're on Puka.
Yeah, we're on Puka. The one before. You're almost there.
Yeah. No, I'm selling this. I think that as the teams, I was reading the comments. I had my screen on the other side. I was reading the comments. But as the team's game plan, his impact is going to decrease. Teams have a very small sample size of this wide receiver. And once they start getting film on him, they're going to start learning how to game plan against his big offensive production. In week 1, he had 100 some yards. In week 2, he had over 150 yards. He's become Stafford's new favorite target. When Cooper Kupp comes back, he'll see numbers decreased if Cooper Kupp is coming back at all this year. But there's another wide receiver or tight end that's on the Rams that's playing well. So Stafford generally finds a person that's consistent, that can catch the football, and he generally throws the ball to them, at least 5 to 10 times a football game. So we can expect to see at least 5 to 10 passes thrown this guy's way. It's just a matter of how many plays he's going to make, how many tackles he's going to break, how far he can get in the receiving game down the field. I am going to sell this though. He cannot maintain his historic start, but he's had a really good start. I actually picked him up in fantasy football after week 1 for a wide receiver position, and I plan on playing him this week. So I am excited to have him in the lineup. But this is a sell for me.
Yeah, keep an eye on him. I do know he has that oblique strain. But I think he's a go. But it's definitely thankfully you got until Monday night to make sure that he's going to be in the lineup. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts here? Buying or selling?
I am buying currently because Cooper Cup is probably not going to be playing here in at least the next couple games. And Matt, he's got my boy Matt Stafford throwing the ball. Matt Stafford's looking like he turned back the clock a little bit this year. But I'm still a little salty for you on the audience out there. Our fine host here outbid me on Puka Nakua on the waivers this week, and he didn't even start him.
Didn't
So
even
it's a buy. He's getting targets.
An embarrassment of riches I have on that fantasy team, even though I lost and he could have helped me win that week. But anyways, enough about my fantasy football woes. I think with this one, you know what? I've been going back and forth on this one, and I think I am going to sell it just because I think certainly while Cooper Kupp is out, he has all of the opportunity. But to Joe's point, as team, it's been 2 weeks now that Stafford has really been going to him and using him as an outlet. So if I'm the defensive coordinator for any of the teams playing the Rams while Cooper Kupp is out, I'm sort of now flagging this guy as being okay. We know this is the guy that Stafford likes to go to. Let's take him out of the game. Let's double team him. Let's do the things that a receiver of the caliber of Cooper Kupp is able to overcome. But I don't know if Puka is at that level yet. I don't know if he can sort of overcome the double team or be able to carry the team when he's being targeted by the defense and trying to be taken out of the game plan. So that's my only concern. And while I'm selling this, is that teams are going to start game planning against him, knowing that he is Stafford's target after 2 weeks and all the production he's seen. And so I'm going to sell on that, but I certainly understand buying it because I think even when Cooper Kupp comes back, that'll actually help him because then defenses won't be able to target him directly anymore. They'll be more worried about Cooper Kupp, and that'll give him the opportunity to get open and be successful. So I think he definitely has a lot of opportunity in front of him, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough as defenses start to figure that out. Now, Joe, we're ready here to talk about the DeAndre Swift, the RB1 in Philadelphia. We talked a little bit about it during the Grind the Grid segment about how he's had his coming out party for Philadelphia against the Vikings, having over 175 yards on the ground. Are we buying or selling the fact that he has now established himself as RB1 inside of Philadelphia?
I really think that last year when he was with the Detroit Lions, he was the elusive running back. He would have been the every down back, but he was seen as the playmaker on offense, and he got injured for the first few weeks of the season. So he was really, special when they put him in there. He was more of a playmaker than Jamal Williams. So when he goes over to Philadelphia and he's got a similar production running back who he's competing with, but after seeing the preseason and after seeing the first 2 games that he's played in, I think he's earned the number 1 spot. This is a buy for me. Yep.
Jeffrey, thoughts?
I am buying this. Philadelphia in their first 2 games have not looked as dominant as they were last year. And what has worked for them though is when they're relying on that run game. They ran the ball for like almost the entire drive at one point in the second game in week 2 here, and they basically gave it DeAndre Swift the whole time, and he bell cowed that up, and he is currently 3rd in the rushing race this year.
And that's after 1 week because he only got 1 carry in week 1. So all that production came from just that week 2. So that's a great point. I think it's easy to buy this. Of course, the thing that everyone is pointing out in chat and that I think we all recognize too is going to be can he stay healthy, right? That was one of the reasons why I think the Lions wanted to move on from him, was just because they he's struggled to be on the field and be available for the team. Interestingly enough, the reason that he got the start against the Vikings was because Kenneth Gainwell, the guy who was RB1 in week 1, he got injured in towards the end of that game. So that, gave Swift an opportunity that he capitalized in week 2 against the Vikings. So it's going to be interesting if he can stay healthy. I mean, we all know he's very talented. He can come up with some pretty electrifying plays. And so it's, of course, going to be one of those things that us Lions fans pay attention to moving forward, because it's one of those pieces we let go, and certainly one of those guys that I think the fan base was sort of, even if you feel that he's a guy that was injury prone, still a guy that I think added excitement and was still, I think one of the sadder offseason losses that we had this year. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball. And Jeff, I know you mentioned this a little bit during pointed this out, but Michael Parsons is the best player in the NFL, not just the best defensive player. I have here the best player in the NFL. Are you buying or selling that? And Jeff, we'll kick it off with you.
I am selling it because there's a lot of players in the NFL, and I think offensive players do get a lot of the spotlight quite a bit, especially for these races, these awards and all that. I do think he is as you kind of alluded to, I think he is the best defensive player that we have currently playing right now. I mean, if you watch his tape from the past 2 weeks, I mean, he's just destroying whoever they have lined up against him. And he reminds me of when Aaron Donald is super dominant, and a lot of these like interior and edge rushers who can kind of switch around, play off of stunts and all this kind of stuff. I think he is best defensive player, but I think there are better players out there in the NFL as a whole.
Gotcha. Joe, what are your thoughts here? Buy or sell?
He may be the best player in the NFL for one game or for 2 games or for like 5 games throughout the season. But that title goes to somebody else on any given Sunday. It's just like, any week, any team can be any team, and, one rule of thumb that I always think about is that there's always somebody better and there's always somebody worse. There's always somebody that's going through something more difficult, and there's always somebody who's better than where you are. If you feel like you're on top, there's somebody who's above you. We see that with the records in the NFL. You think you're going to stay on top. Favre was on top for a few seasons before Peyton Manning beat him. Peyton Manning was on top before Tom Brady beat him. The rule of thumb is there's always somebody better. There's always somebody worse. For one game maybe, but for any given Sunday, there's always a better player out there. So this is a sell for me. He may be a dominant, really good player in the NFL, but I don't think that having that title, even if he is right now through 2 weeks, that you can statistically and game performance like hold that title all season long. So it's a sell.
Yeah, some good points there, and also Nick bringing up a good point of what exactly defines the best player. It's hard to contextualize that, especially because it's hard to compare a quarterback to a linebacker or an edge rusher, because quarterbacks obviously are every offensive play touching the ball, so their impact on the game is quite significant. Whereas an edge rusher, they're only out there during defensive snaps and things like that. But all things considered, I think obviously I'm a little biased because I generated some of the, a lot of the prompts here in the buy or sell, but I'm going to go ahead and buy. And I'm going to say Parsons is the best player in the NFL just because I think the closest player at the moment that I've seen through these first 2 weeks who has had the ability to sort of impose their will on a game. I think Parsons has been doing that through the first 2 weeks. And then the next closest has been TJ Watt and what he's been doing for Pittsburgh. I know he just set the all-time record for Steelers player for the number of sacks in their career. Those 2 guys right now are really, they're getting in the backfield and causing havoc and really causing problems on every down for the opposing offense. So their ability to impact a game has me buying this. And Jeff, I think to your point, when you mentioned Aaron Donald, when he was at his prime and he had that ability where you had to account for him on every snap he was out there, I think that's where we're at with Parsons, right? I think he is at that point where if you're not coming up with a way to double team him or get support over to him, he will get in the backfield and he will ruin your day. So I'll give him the title at the moment. And to Joe's point, that title changes hands quickly, but for today, I'm going to give Micah Parsons the best player in the NFL. I'll buy that. Speaking of players or teams that are performing above expectations, we have the Saints defense. They have been rather impressive through the first 2 weeks of the season. Are you gentlemen buying or selling the facts that the Saints have a top 5 defense? Now, they haven't necessarily played some of the more explosive offenses, but what they've done so far has been impressive. Jeff, what are your thoughts here about the Saints defense?
I am going to buy currently based on the defenses that we've seen. I mean, the only caveats being that, they did play against a rookie quarterback for one of those, but, they're keeping their team in games because their offense has been, outside of some big chunk plays from Derek Carr, the offense has been stagnant. So they've been relying on this defense to keep games close for them while their offense trying to figure out what's going on there.
Great point. Joe, what are your thoughts here? Buying or selling?
Here's a rule of thumb. The top 5 defenses are Chicago, generally. This is general out of the theme of football. Chicago, Baltimore, and this year Dallas. Those are just 3 teams that we can look at that we can say, yes, perennial every year. These teams have good defense. But what we're looking at right now is the Saints' top 5 defense.
Yeah, the Saints.
The Saints. Generally, the Saints are not known for their defense, and you cannot put too much emphasis on the Saints' defense this early on in the season. Like you said, Kevin, you said that they haven't played some of the more potent offenses. But still, it's the Saints' defense. The rule of thumb is that the Saints generally do not have a good defense. This is a sell for me.
Yeah, I mean, so far, I'm going to have to buy this one just because I like what I've seen out of them so far. I like the addition of Von Bell. They brought him in from Cincinnati to help out their secondary because I think their secondary throughout the years, that since they've had Cam Jordan on the edge there, their defenses, especially their pass rush, has been pretty good. It's really been their secondary that has been an issue for them, and I think they were able to bring in some pieces to help shore that up. And so far, they've been looking good. So we'll see how it goes for the Saints. But I think right now they're certainly playing well, and if they can avoid any big injuries, I think we'll see them at the end of the year being there towards the top of the league in defensive stats. So something to keep an eye on there. Now, Joe, we talked a little bit about Tampa Bay, and they're off to a 2-0 start. Really, the NFC South in general, we have 3 2-0 teams, but the Buccaneers are one of those 3 teams, which comes as a bit of a surprise, I think, for a lot of people. Of course, Tom Brady retiring, Baker Mayfield coming over from the Rams in the offseason. The question here, buying or selling, are the 2-0 Tampa Bay Buccaneers led by Baker Mayfield, are they for real? Are they a team that can compete moving forward? Joe, you mentioned it earlier, so we'll kick it over to you just to recap your thoughts there.
Yeah, early season telling the tale of the Carolina Panthers being 0-2. I don't think they'll make the playoffs. They'll have a subpar record, and they'll use this season to experience Bryce Young. And then the Saints are probably going to win the division. The Atlanta Falcons are going to have a losing record overall. And then it goes to the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers are most likely going to have a 500 or winning record by a few games. So, it's whether or not they make the playoffs with that, but they'll be competitive. Yeah, they'll be competitive, and they'll possibly make the playoffs. But I can't see them causing too much damage. If they make the playoffs, they'll probably lose their first game. But still a lot of season left to go. And, I'm sure the Atlanta Falcons want to talk, about their playoff chances starting 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't think they have the quarterback that can really be in the position to make an impact all season long. Plus, if he gets injured, who's their backup? And, you always got to look at these injuries because what we're going to talk about soon is the Detroit Lions injuries. And it's like, okay, well, we lost a lot of playmakers. And, when you look at this, it's like, Tampa Bay is fine with Baker Mayfield, but you lose him, you got a backup that he was competing against, all preseason until they named him the starter. So it's like, that they might still be competitive even if they do lose Baker Mayfield because Tampa Bay was just built so strongly when they had Brady, and they haven't lost a lot of players since then.
Great point. Jeff, what are your thoughts here? Buy or sell Baker Mayfield in the Bucks?
I'm buying this. I think Baker Mayfield brings some juice to that offense. I really hope he's stopped that habit of headbutting his teammates without his helmet on. That's just like
a
don't do that,
CTE nightmare.
Yeah, that's just you're giving yourself CT for free. But he is feeding Mike Evans. Mike Evans looks like he's going to be a strong candidate this year for Offensive Player of the Year, I think. But he brings the juice here, and I think he didn't get a fair shake at the end of his Browns tenure, in my opinion. He came in on 2 days preparation in that game against the Rams where they came back last season. I think there's still a good quarterback in there, and Tampa Bay's defense is really strong, so they're going to keep them in games.
Great point. Yeah, I definitely think he's one of the 32 best QBs in the NFL. I think he deserves to be an NFL quarterback. And this one is very interesting because the NFC South kind of went from being a division that was no good to being one that now it's one of those ones we're going to talk about here with the next question about being a potential to send 3 teams to the playoffs with the Saints, the Falcons, and the Buccaneers. So far this season, they've beaten the Vikings and they've beaten the Bears, which aren't real. Obviously both of those teams are off to disappointing 0-2 starts. It'll be interesting to see. They're playing the Eagles on Monday Night Football this week. I think that'll be a better way to get a good good feeling of what the ceiling is for this team. But you know what? I am going to buy and say they are for real because I do think at the very least they'll be able to challenge for that NFC South division title, if not a wild card spot. So I'm going to join you gentlemen, and I'm going to be buying this one. Now, speaking of the NFC playoff race, as I alluded to just a moment ago, our final buy or sell question here is currently, if we take a look at the standings, and again, we're only 2 weeks into this young season. But that being said, there are currently 3 divisions, I think, that have a legitimate shot in the NFC of sending 3 teams to the playoffs, depending on how things work out. Those being the NFC East, the NFC West, and the NFC South. Unfortunately, that does not include our NFC North, where we're located. But I think realistically, the East, the West, and the South, depending on how the crazy season plays out, has an opportunity to send 3 teams. Gentlemen, are you buying or selling the idea that one of these divisions will be able to send 3 teams into the playoffs? That's not only the division winner, but then claim 2 of the wild card spots. Joe, what are your thoughts there? Do you think one of these divisions can pull that off this season?
No, this is a sell for me. I think the NFL is evenly broken up amongst all the football teams, and we're going to see 2 from one division, and that'll be about it because although a lot of teams in these 3 divisions that you named are starting off 2-0, I don't see them being able to keep it up because of the even level of the NFL football league. The even level of the NFL football league. Yes, I think that mostly every team in the NFL has even amount of talent on it. If any team has more talent, it has just a little bit more talent. All has to do with coaching. So I mean, you got to look at the overall aspect of the divisions. The divisions are evenly broken up. They'll be even, so this is a sell for me.
Joe's going sell. Jeff, what are your thoughts here?
I think this is going to be a sell for me as well. um, I think as far as the NFC South goes, I don't believe in the Atlanta Falcons. I know their rushing attack is good and that they're 2-0, but we have not seen what Desmond Ritter can actually do, especially if they're behind in games and they have to throw, and in situations where we have to get the ball downfield and we can't just ground and pound and control the clock. We gotta air it out, and we have not seen that. And he's kind of been hidden behind this run game, so I don't think there's a third team going in there. I think the NFC North is going to be some cannibalistic tendencies here, so I think they're off the list. The NFC East, I don't believe in the Washington Commanders or the Giants myself, so I'm selling that. I see Dallas and Philadelphia definitely. NFC West, I think there'll be some more cannibalism there. We don't truly know what the Seahawks and the Rams are about. We definitely know what the 49ers are about, and that's kicking some ass. So I'm selling.
Yeah, this one I'm going to sell as well, just because the fact that there are right now 3 of the 4 divisions looking like they could potentially send 3 teams. Obviously, we're just 2 weeks into the season, but when you have, that's already 9 strong teams from those 3 divisions. There's just not enough spots for everybody to make it. So these teams are going to be sort of beating each other. And the fact that you're going to have, I think you should see a good mix from the divisions, because you do have teams, I think, that are capable in so many different divisions. And I think the downside for us as Lions fans is, as we take a look here at the get ready for our Kings in the North, King of the North segment, is the fact that winning the NFC North may be very crucial to the ability for the Lions to make the playoffs. Because having so many good teams throughout the NFC means that wild card race is going to be really tight. We just lost a game to Seattle, and of course that was a big thing that impacted last year's playoff race. Um, as we look at this King of the North picture, I think it's going to be really crucial for the Lions. And of course, we don't really start. Of course, we're playing the Falcons this week. The following week, we're playing Green Bay, and then the rest of our division games all happen later in the season. But those games are going to be really crucial, because it's looking like the playoff race in the NFC could be very tight. And speaking of the rankings inside the North, of course, the Packers are still sitting at the number 1 spot. They're still on the throne in the NFC North. They did lose last week to Atlanta, but they are still 1-1, and of course have the only victory in the division against the Bears. The Lions are sitting there in second place, also 1-1, but their victory being against the Chiefs. And then, of course, there are the Vikings in de facto third place, just because they have 2 losses, but not to an NFC North team. And the Bears sit in the cellar at 0-2 because they lost to the Packers in week 1. So right now, the throne still belongs to Green Bay. We'll have an ability to change that, not this week, but the following week as we go to Lambeau. Thankfully, that game is in September and not towards the end of the year, because end of the year time in Lambeau is not usually fun time for the Lions. So we'll be able to get in there and hopefully get a win early in the year and take the throne from them then. All right. Now it's time to get really Lions focused here, gentlemen. We've done a good job taking a look around the NFL and, of course, talking about some things that are impactful to the Lions. But before we take a look at our upcoming game against the Falcons, we just want to touch here about last week's game against Seattle. Obviously, a lot of hype running into that game. The blue ski masks, being the villains, getting Ford Field rocking, wanting to start the season off 2-0. And really, the Lions fans did not disappoint. From all reports, the field, the environment there was hostile. We were doing our job and really pumping the field with energy, and the players apologized for not being able to capitalize on that after the game. But of course, the Lions losing that game in overtime to Seattle, 37-31. And I think one of the big stories coming out of that was the injuries. Of course, numerous ones there. I think the good one, or at least the The least serious injury was Amon-Ra St. Brown. He left the game with cramps, so hopefully he'll be good to go this weekend because, cramps definitely are something that's hard to play through, but hopefully we can get him right and get him ready for the upcoming game against the Falcons. But then the other injuries were all kind of serious. Vaitai and Montgomery both going to probably miss multiple weeks. Vaitai had a left knee injury, Montgomery out with a thigh bruise, and then we had a couple of season-ending injuries with James Houston breaking his ankle and C.J. Gardner tearing his pectoral muscle. It's kind of scary, gentlemen, when we take a look at that. What is sort of your guys's, and of course, in addition to those injuries that happened last weekend, we also had Aquara, who was put on IR to start the season. And after week one, Pascal was also added to IR. So we're looking really thin on our defensive front. Gentlemen, what is sort of where's your panic meter at for the Lions with these mounting injuries? Joe, let's kick it over to you.
I really think that this is detrimental to the overall success of the football team. I think it's sad to see every single year with the Detroit Lions. It don't matter if they start off 3-0 or 5-2 or 4-3 or whatever their starting record is. When things start getting bad, they start getting injured. I see this time and time again with the Detroit Lions. They have a bad drive. They give up points they shouldn't have given up. They start getting injured. It's like part of being a good football team is not getting injured in the course of a football game. And these Detroit Lions have always gotten injured. It doesn't bode well for their success, and it's very detrimental to the success of the football team. Kind of a disappointment seeing all these injuries and then wondering how they're going to do for the rest of the season. All that hype, all that momentum after beating Kansas City, to rile up the crowd and say, "Oh, get the face masks, come in here, and we're gonna play, and we're gonna win the football game. We're gonna start off 2-0." That hype only lasts for opening football game. After that, it's all. Yeah, you can talk all you want to talk, but what's got to happen is the performance has got to produce the victories. And the performance did not meet the victories. They lost the football game, and their defense was bad, and their offense too little, too late. So, yeah, the injuries are a big part of it, but yeah, it's going to hurt them throughout the course of the season now.
Well, certainly, Jeff. What are your thoughts here?
My panic meter is at a 7 out of 10. I would say. I mean, if you look at this list, all of them are playmakers, which is, with a feisty up and coming team like that, plays need to be made. You know what I mean? Like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, he brought the sauce to that defense. Yeah, you wanted to bring that stupid ski mask thing in, but you know what? Hey, he was trying, right? The list is just, yeah, like I said, full of playmakers. I think Jared Goff's going to continue to do well, but like Joe said, it kills the hype. It's just like, man, and that too with the defensive front, we were so deep, and now look at us.
Yeah, I think it certainly it sucks the air out of the room, right? Like we had just gone into Arrowhead, beat the Chiefs, and if you've been listening to Detroit sports talk around here recently, it is very much doom and gloom. Valeni and Rico both have been very much about the fact if we don't beat the Falcons this Sunday, our season could be done by week 4. It's because if we don't beat the Falcons, they don't see us beating the Packers. And if we're 1-3 after the first 4 games, it's getting a little pessimistic on 97 the ticket. Perhaps we were drinking the Kool-Aid a little too soon. But I will say, one of the things that was kind of a bummer was Jared Goff. Of course, his streak ended. He threw an INT, which was returned for 6. So not only was it an interception, but it was the dreaded pick 6. So that was a little bit of a bummer. But really, outside of that, and arguably that interception wasn't necessarily his fault. There definitely was some miscommunication between him and Gibbs. But outside of that, he played rather well. And so to your point, Jeffrey, I think, I'm not too concerned about that. I think the big concern for me is the injuries. Of course, Taylor Decker was also outside of that game. Uh, didn't play in that game either. He was a scratch before the game with his ankle injury. Um, I think one of the big concerns for me outside of the injuries, though, is the clock management that we saw in that game. Uh, you know, Dan Campbell, I love the fact that he's aggressive. Obviously, he went for several fourth down attempts in that game. He was 1 for 3 in the game. I love that aggressive nature about him and that he's not afraid to go out and try and win games. But then in the fourth quarter, when you have 3 timeouts left and it's under a minute and you're playing to kick a field goal to tie the game to go to overtime, that doesn't sound like Dan Campbell to me, right? Dan Campbell is aggressive. He wants to win the game. And you played in a way that sort of seemed detrimental to that. I would have been, if we lost this game because we were unable to get a touchdown, or because time ran out and we weren't able to kick a last second field goal to move it to overtime, that's fine. But I didn't like the fact that it seemed like the Lions didn't actively try to win that game in regulation against the Seahawks, because to me that doesn't seem like the type of football, the type of energy that Dan Campbell likes to bring to things. So it's almost like he went against himself there and tried to play things safe. And love or hate Dan Campbell, the man has huge cojones. So if you're going to have huge cojones and you're going to come out here and make some risky calls, I want to see it all the time. I don't want to see you play things safe. Go for the win. And so it's going to be something to keep an eye on too, because this isn't the first time that he's had some clock management issues. Obviously this is his first head coaching job. So it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on, because one of the big conversations they were having on the ticket today is Dan Campbell good enough coach to get the Lions to a Super Bowl? Obviously, he's a guy that a lot of us respect, a lot of us enjoy. He's definitely a coach the players enjoy playing for, but does he have the experience, the ability, and the skill to elevate a team to a Super Bowl team? And if he doesn't continue to do the things he does well and be that sort of courageous, brave guy that we know and love, I think if he second guesses himself and tries to play things safe, I don't think he is that guy. But if he continues to trust in himself and this team, he could very well lead the Lions to a Super Bowl, but he needs to be consistent in that belief. All right. So based off of that game, we'll talk about our champs and chumps here. I'll kick things off with my champs and chumps. So my champs for this game are the Lions fans, because CJ Johnson, Gardner, the Lions team asked for the fans to come out and make the Ford Field a hostile environment for the Seahawks, and we delivered. The Lions fans held up their part of the deal, so they're my champs. My chump for the game is going to be Dan Campbell, because again, overall the decision it's really what he did there in that fourth quarter, that turning away from the things that have brought him success, deciding to play things safe and go for that overtime instead of trying to go for the win when you have 3 timeouts and not spending any of them. To me, it's inexcusable. So he's going to be my chump, and with hopefully a caveat that he gets back to his big cojones self here this week against the Falcons. Jeff, who are your champs and chumps this week?
My champ this week is Jared Goff. Yes, he did break his streak and threw the pick six. I don't think the pick six was his fault, but he is balling out there despite all these injuries. He's playing some of his best football since he took the Rams to the Super Bowl. I think he's going to continue to have a good year. I don't know if necessarily the Lions will win off of that. I think he's going to need help from a lot of different areas. But he's my champ of this week. My chump, our chumps this week are all the people who bought blue ski masks. Wasted your money. Just, at least you'll be warm in the winter, I guess. But they're chumps this week for me.
Joe, who's your champ? Who's your chump?
The champ of the week is the Lions offense, on the sole purpose fact that they came back from 10 points down with under 5 minutes to go. So that's big news. Lions offense number one for champ of the week, but the chump, Lions defense, giving up all that yardage, giving up all those points. Not being able to stop Seattle and Geno Smith. this was really the game where they're going to test Geno Smith and see if he's the real deal. They've been talking about whether or not he's a real quarterback that's going to compete in the NFL for a few seasons, or whether or not it was just a year one fluke with the Seattle Seahawks. And it didn't look like a fluke when he was playing the Detroit Lions last week. So it's a little bit unfortunate that that the Lions defense gave up so many points. So they are my champ Lions offense, chump Lions defense.
That's a great call. And one thing that we didn't mention when doing the recap, I hate to call out a single player on the defense, but Jerry Jacobs is one of the cornerbacks. He is obviously the Lions spent a lot of money bringing in players this offseason to try and address those secondary issues. But Jerry Jacobs is looking lost out there. He was on Tyler Lockett a lot in that game. And I don't know if it's just him or if it's the play calling, but they were having him play, 10, 15 yards off the line of scrimmage to not let Tyler Lockett beat him deep. And then Tyler Lockett just ran routes in front of him all day long. And it, you know, I'm not sure, we're starting to see some moves around the league. The Vikings traded for Cam Akers, trying to get some running back help. I'm sure there'll be some more moves that get made throughout the season. But one thing that's starting to pop up on my wish list is someone to replace Jerry Jacobs because he's really looking lost out there for the Lions. And right now he's definitely the weak link. So he's starting to draw my ire a little bit there. And we'll have to see how that goes. But moving on to game day storylines here for the upcoming matchup against the Falcons. Obviously the game is on Sunday, so still quite a bit of time to go before the actual game. But here are some things to keep an eye on as we get closer to kickoff on Sunday. Number one, I think the most important things here, especially after that momentum has seemed to be sucked out of the hype train, is can the Lions bounce back after a tough week 2 loss? That's going to be interesting to see. And gentlemen, sort of curious to get your guys' thoughts there about whether or not you think they can do it against the Falcons, who I think are a better team. Obviously, Jeff, you pointed out the fact that Dennis Ritter hasn't necessarily been tested yet, but it's going to be interesting to see, how the Falcons stack up against us. So, Joe, we'll start with you here. Do you think the Lions are going to be able to bounce back this week against the Falcons?
You take a look around the background right here. You see the Lions Stadium right there, Lions Drive right there, and then Lions 1934 right there. What kind of person would I be if I kept chosen against the Lions? I got to go with the Lions to put it together and to salvage their season, especially if I predicted them to go to the Super Bowl. So yeah, the Lions got to put it together. They got to play better. They got to win this week. When I was reviewing the game prep notes, I was thinking to myself, I'm going to pick against the Lions. So if they do win, then I'll be happy that they won, and if they do lose, at least I'll get the pick'em section right. But I mean, there's no philosophy in that. You can go a double bonus and get the win for the Lions, and then predicting them to win. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get the double bonus today with the Lions support and having a little bit more faith in them than what I should. So yeah, I'm going with the Lions.
Very nice. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts here? Do you think the Lions can bounce back?
I do, but I think it's going to be very difficult. I think it's going to be another close game. I'll be at the game, so I get to see it firsthand whether we can bounce back or not. But like I said alluded to earlier, the Falcons' run game is pretty good. They have a pretty good running back there as well, and the Lions could not stop the run. So I think it's going to be a close game, but we got to win this game.
Yeah, as I sort of mentioned, we haven't really seen the Lions come up against a really solid rushing attack. Of course, Bijan's back there. But as mentioned earlier, they also have Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson. So it's really there's three guys you got to deal with. So Jeffrey, if things get too out of hand there on Ford Field on Sunday, we might need you to hop down on the field and go make a tackle for us.
Give me a helmet. Give me a helmet. I'm gonna run out there.
Might need you to sell out for a play and try and stop them if things get too rough. So It's gonna. I think we also talked about this a little bit earlier too. Is the fact that I think for their careers, you're always going to have this comparison between Bijan and Gibbs because of how things worked out in the draft. Um, so, gentlemen, between those two running backs, obviously Montgomery's out for the Lions. You would think that would mean Gibbs is going to play a bigger role in the game plan for Sunday. Which rookie do you think will have the bigger game? Do you think it's going to be Bijan, who of course is coming in with more stats, or do you think Gibbs will step up and fill the spotlight with this vacancy left by Montgomery? Jeffrey, what are your thoughts there?
I think Gibbs will have my hope is Gibbs has the better game, and I'm going to pick for it that Gibbs will have a better game. Um, he's got to shoulder the load. Like they wanted to kind of ease him into this, but I think now's the time to unleash him. You drafted around, and your strategy was to get your guy. I mean, you saw the reaction video when they drafted him.
Mm.
They made the offensive coordinator made a comment about how he's going to use Gibbs in ways that the NFL has never seen. I mean, like let's unleash him. I mean, our season's on the brink here. Let's get him the ball. Let's beat out Robinson and take the win.
Joe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have the better football game. I think he'll have the better stats. I think he'll get in the end zone, and I think he'll do well as the backup for replacement for David Montgomery in this game. But they did sign the running back off of the practice squad. And as far as I'm concerned, I think I only saw them have Jason Cabnetta, the fullback, David Montgomery, and then Jahmyr Gibbs. And I guess last week they put in that other backup running back that had a few carries. Can't remember.
Craig Reynolds.
Craig Reynolds, and
Yep.
I don't see him doing too well. I think they put him back on the practice squad or something, but they moved somebody up. So I mean, we'll get to see some new talent back there and some more of Jahmyr Gibbs. So we'll know more about what this running back is about after this week.
Yeah, I think this recipe is certainly right to see more of Gibbs. There really isn't anybody else, and of course, you look at even at the receiver position, we're a little thin. So there is a need for an offensive playmaker to step up, and so when you look at them, I think there's a bigger need for Gibbs to have a big game, but just because there's a bigger need or opportunity for a player to have a big game doesn't always equal to them doing it. But I'll stay optimistic. I'm going to say that Gibbs will come out and have a good game, but I don't know. I'm really scared about this Lions rush defense because I don't think it's been tested yet this season, and I think we're about to have a really big test headed into Ford Field this weekend because again, it's not just Bijan. Bijan's a problem in himself, but they have two other running backs that are more than capable of pounding the Lions into submission. So I'm a little scared, but hopefully we'll see. It also provides a good opportunity to see more out of Jack Campbell as well. He was another first round pick. Did not play a whole lot last week. So hopefully it's a opportunity for. No, I'm not on gummies. Good Lord. Hopefully it is a good opportunity for Campbell to come out here and make a statement as well, because I think, when you look at the first round picks that Brad Holmes has had the last couple of years, obviously JMO is currently, we're waiting for him to come off a suspension. We really haven't seen a whole lot of productivity out of Gibbs or Campbell yet in the regular season. It's go time, gentlemen. We want to see you strap on the helmets and go to work and see, what all this excitement and what all this value the Lions put in you. We want to see some return on that. So there's no better time than the present. And you guys pointed it out. It's an important week for the Lions. You don't want to fall to 1-2. You don't want to lose your first two home games. It's a big week. So Joe, I know you've already come out and declared your pick here, going with the Lions. Jeffrey, who are you locking in this week for pick'em? Mind you, we're all currently 1-1, and we've all been picking the Lions so far. Are you going to be the first person to pick outside of the Lions for the regular season, or are you going to stay true to the blue?
I am staying true to the blue. I can never stop drinking that Kool-Aid, Kevin Mahoney Sr. I'm picking the Lions. I don't think we're at DEFCON 5 yet. Like I said, my panic level is only at a 7. I think if we win this game and we look a lot better and not turn the ball over, which is we've had 3 or 4 turnovers in the first 2 games, not going to happen if we do that. But I'm picking the Lions to get a bounce back win here.
Yeah, you know what? I hate to suckle up to the fountain of the Kool-Aid man, but you know what? I'm gonna go with the Lions as well. You know, I said after they beat the Chiefs, you know, for the most part, throughout the season, more often than not, I'm probably going to be picking the Lions as long as injuries don't become too big of an issue. We're sort of starting to skate that line where injuries are becoming a little bit of an issue, but still, I think the Lions are a team, you know, heading into the season that should certainly be able to beat the Falcons. It was a team that I certainly thought they should be able to should be able to win against. So I'm not going to change it here and not give up on them and step on the brakes too hard on the hype train. So hopefully get back on track here and improve to 2-1 on the season. But it'll be interesting. If the bear haven't stopped to shit, it would have caught the bird. I don't think bears chase birds, Father. And have you been into the gummies? Is really the question, I guess here. Because that's I'm not sure about that one, but yeah,
one of things going on in there.
there are some things going on, but I want to thank everybody.
Ed's got the Lions. Ed's got the Lions 27-24.
Heck yeah, Ed.
He's drinking the Kool-Aid with us, so he's hanging in. Yeah, I mean, really, I just want to thank everybody because chat has been very active. You know, thank you guys for tuning in and watching and contributing to the show. We definitely appreciate your input and your feedback, and certainly we'll look to continue to have chat involved inside of what we're doing here for the show moving forward. And of course, you can catch us every Thursday here on the Lions Grid. The only exception may be the Thanksgiving game because, of course, that's on a Thursday, and so that's going to mess up our usual schedule. But we'll get to that when we get further into the season. But otherwise, 7:30 p.m. Thursday nights, you can find us here on the Lions Grid, coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter, pulling in or streaming to all the different platforms. So if you are a fan of the show, you can like and watch our videos on whichever platform works the best for you. So appreciate the compliment there, Ed, about the great show. We hope to have you back next week. And gentlemen, Joe and Jeff, thanks for joining me as always. Appreciate it.
Go Lions.
Yes, go Lions. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. We'll see you next week, everybody. And yeah, I think the gentleman said it best. Go Lions.